right, good morning. Good morning. Good morning, members of the press. Good morning to our wonderful legislators who are gathered here, our lawmakers. We are here today for a very important occasion. I am Minister Janae Bates Amari. That is spelled J-A-N-A-E, Bates, B-A-T-E-S, Amari, I-M-A-R-I. I'm the co-executive director of Faith in Minnesota, and I am here with several of our lawmakers who are signed on to a very important day that is happening here in the state of Minnesota. So as many know, our state has experienced one of the most devastating, most aggressive, and the most violent in our nation's history, immigration enforcement. And to be clear, it is not just about immigration. It has been about cutting our federal funding. It has been about cutting Minnesotans off from one another. It has been about division and divisive tactics that tell us that we shouldn't care for each other. It has been about pushing us down and trying to subject us, trying to tell us that we deserve less than what we do. And Minnesotans have overwhelmingly said no. We have stood and refused together that this state is deserving of the kind of pain and cruelty that we have experienced from ICE enforcement and ICE agents in our state. And so on Friday, January 23rd, Minnesotans across race, across place, across faith, across income, across industry are coming together to take a collective pause, to take a day of reflection and moral action together. And this day of truth and freedom is one that is being called for by Minnesotans across the board. Hundreds of businesses have already signed on, so have students, so have hundreds of organizations and labor unions, hundreds of faith institutions and communities, and we are calling for this to be a day where no one shops, no one goes to school, no one goes to work. But instead, we take action together in community, in moral reflection, and in moral action. And so as we are gathered here, we also have legislators who are here standing in solidarity with their constituents, with Minnesotans. We also, it's important to note that those who are outside of Minnesota have been standing in solidarity with us. We have heard from thousands upon thousands of people in different states across the country who are having echo actions similar to our large rally and march in downtown Minneapolis at 2 p.m. on Friday. And they are holding space for people to reflect, to fast, to pray, to lament about what is taking place here in the hopes that what Minnesotans do together, the way Minnesotans show radical compassion, love, care, hospitality for one another in the face of this violence, that this will be a reflection of what is possible in every other state. Not the violence, but the love. Not the harm, but the care. And so that is why I am grateful to introduce our next speaker, Representative Jamie Long, as he speaks about why he and so many others are here and are celebrating, frankly, this day of unity and of truth and freedom on Friday.
Thank you so much. Good morning. My name is Jamie Long. I am the House Democratic floor leader. My mother-in-law immigrated to the United States from Peru 50 years ago. And last week she had a doctor's appointment. And she brought two things with her to her doctor's appointment. She brought her passport and she brought my wife. And that was not because she was afraid of the neighborhood where the doctor's office was. It wasn't because she was afraid to go to the doctor alone. It was because she told me that she was afraid that if I stopped her, her accent would be too hard for them to understand when she told them that she was a U.S. citizen. And we have seen this fear across our communities, and it is justified because we know that ICE has been stopping, detaining, arresting, harassing people for no more than their skin color or their accent. And this racial profiling is not an accident, it is the point. We are seeing folks from ICE trying to meet arrest quotas and arresting citizens and arresting individuals through no other reason than their skin color. And we are seeing that this is creating a culture of fear in our immigrant communities, and this is the point. My mother-in-law made it to her doctor's appointment because my wife took off work to allow that to happen. But so many Minnesotans have had to skip going to the doctor, have had to skip going to work, have had to skip going to school, have had to skip going shopping for basic necessities like groceries. And that is not something that I, as a white Minnesotan, have to face. And so that is why I am standing here in solidarity with my colleagues, with our community, with our friends, with our neighbors, with my family, to say that we need ICE out of Minnesota, and that we need accountability for the unlawful, unconstitutional actions that we are seeing every single day. And I need to feel that discomfort. I need to feel, at least for one day, what it's like to be a person of color in Minnesota, in the United States in 2026, who is afraid to do the very basic things. I need to experience that truth, and I need to stand up for the freedom that all Minnesotans and all Americans deserve. And with that, I'll turn it over to Senator Muhammad.
Thank you, for Representative Long, for sharing, and to my colleagues who are not just from Minneapolis, but almost every corner of our state, who have been incredibly strong in this moment. And thanks for asking me to speak today. And for the opportunity to speak before you, on the opportunity to speak before you in calling for all Minnesotans and all supportive Americans to join us in a day of collective action. By now, we all know the names, images, and stories we will never forget. Renee Gutt, shot and killed point blank in broad daylight. Zhang Tao, dragged from his home in the freezing cold in his underwear. Nasra Ahmed, 23-year-old woman having a seizure in Charbon County Jail. Victor Diaz dying in a concentration camp in Texas. Destiny Jackson giving CPR to a 6-month-old baby who was tear gassed. Yesterday, we learned about another victim whose name we don't know yet. A Brooklyn Park police officer driving innocently off duty when she was doxxed in by federal agents who drew guns to her face. Those outrages were caused by lawless federal agents and followed by a cover-up of disgusting lies by the leaders who sent them here. And that alone would be enough for a nationwide day of action. Those violations are playing out hundreds of times a day on people forced into hiding of fear and on neighbors taking their kids to school or their spouses or their parents to the hospital. Minnesotans are saying no and resisting every day in small ways, donating food, giving rides, blowing whistles, and taking videos and delivering food. On Friday, we will resist in a big way, the day of truth and freedom, to pause this state and come together as one. Let's show this authoritarian government that power in the United States lies not in our temporary leaders, but in our Constitution. And those first 3 words, we the people. And I will introduce my colleague, Representative Maria Isa.
Buenos dias. Good morning, Representative Maria Isa Perez Vega. I represent this district of 65B, where we stand in our capital city is St. Paul. I'm speaking today as a legislator, but also as a mom, and someone who's hearing every day from families who are terrified of what will happen to their children if they are detained. Parents are afraid that if a simple errand, a drive to school or a walk to the store could mean being separated from their kids. That is our reality in all of Minnesota, all areas of Minnesota. No parent should have to prepare their children for the possibility that they may not come home. That fear is real in St. Paul and in West St. Paul and in Duluth and in Rochester and in Mankato, Worthington, and is being caused by the actions of ICE. This fear is not only devastating familias, it's hurting our local economy in immeasurable ways. Small businesses in St. Paul are suffering as people stay home out of fear. Stores are empty. Restaurants are struggling. Entire neighborhoods are being destabilized. This is not how a healthy community functions, and this is not what safety looks like. And the truth is, This could all stop if ICE left Minnesota. The fear, the disruption, the economic harm, it's not inevitable. It is the result of deliberate federal actions targeting our communities. That is why we must respond together. And we must respond peacefully. I want to thank everybody that has been doing that. Thank you for keeping faith and hopeful actions towards the movements of peace. We are calling for a clear, nonviolent, and powerful economic message that says we will not accept this targeting and we will not be silent. Our response is collective, moral, and rooted in dignity. We will show our power, not through harm, but through unity. That is why I'm encouraging Minnesotans across St. Paul, West St. Paul, the districts that I represented, the districts that my colleagues represent. We are calling folks across our state to participate in a day of truth and freedom. On that day, we pause together. No work, no shopping, no school. This pause is to send a message, a clear message that cannot be ignored. Our communities deserve to live without fear. Our children deserve stability. And Minnesota will not accept policies that terrorize families and undermine our local economy. We will show our power, our fuerza, nuestra dignidad, y lo vamos a hacer juntos. We're going to do it together. Muchas gracias.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brad Tabke. I'm a state representative in Shakopee, House District 54A. And I just want to communicate with everyone today that this is something that is happening all over the state of Minnesota. President Trump, Vice President Vance's campaign of retribution against the people of Minnesota is not a Minneapolis thing, a St. Paul thing, an urban thing versus a suburban thing, a red district or a blue district kind of thing. This is a campaign against Minnesotans, and particularly in my community of Shakopee, we have been, we're drowning, we're under siege. It is, we have had we'll do this without crying today, we'll see if this works or not. Thursday, we had hundreds, and that's not hyperbole, that is not exaggeration. We had hundreds of agents in our community terrorizing our neighborhoods, creating fear and intimidation every single day in our communities. And this is, again, not just blue districts and red districts. This is all over the state of Minnesota. We have in Jordan, there are checkpoints set up for every person of color who is coming and going from mobile home parks to get stopped and have their papers checked by ICE. This happens in Shakopee every single day. And ICE is creating this upside down, topsy-turvy world where everyone is someone who should be feared. Everyone is someone who should be looked at askew. And it is not something that we believe in here in Minnesota. It is not something that in my community of Shakopee that we believe in. We have groups of folks working to keep our neighbors safe, to reduce the harm that is being caused by ICE on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, everywhere throughout the state of Minnesota. And it is really important that everyone stand up together on this Friday and make sure that we are sending a strong, clear message that President Trump, Vice President Vance, Minnesotans are working together to get ICE out of our state. It is not making us safer. It is not making our neighborhoods any better by the actions that are happening in our communities, and it must end. People are dying. People that are causing car accidents, they are hurting people. It is happening constantly, and we need to make sure this is happening, that they leave our community. I would say on Saturday morning, we had, there was a resident who was delivering food to a mobile home park in Shakopee. She was surrounded by ICE, 15 agents, guns pointed directly at her and her husband's head for no reason other than delivering food. That is all that was happening. Construction workers trapped on roofs, being threatened with tasers if they don't comply with showing their papers, and they're U.S. citizens. And it is not who we are. And I hope that this can end, and Friday will show that Minnesotans are together on this work that needs to happen. And so I just appreciate everyone being here and telling these stories and talking about the real concrete damage that this is doing in all of our communities across the state of Minnesota. So with that, we have Senator Liz Bolden.
I'm Senator Liz Bolden. I represent District 25, which is Rochester and surrounding areas. Across the state, our families, neighbors, and communities are being terrorized by a militarized federal agency, openly, consistently violating the Constitution, targeting people of color, endangering everyone. The lawlessness, brutality, cruelty, and inhumanity must stop. And I want to echo what my colleagues have said. This is not just a Minneapolis issue or a St. Paul issue. This is happening all over the state, in Mankato, Duluth, Albert Lee, St. Cloud, everywhere in between, and in my community of Rochester. We have seen people snatched out of their cars as they are going to medical appointments. We have seen workers at their job abducted while they are taking the trash out to the dumpster. The impacts of this are immense. People are scared, and rightfully so. But Minnesotans know that we are not powerless in this moment. The same reasons that we are being targeted as a state, and we are being targeted because of who we are. As Minnesotans, we take care of each other. We protect each other. We welcome everyone, regardless of where you were born, who you pray to, how much money is in your bank account. We show up for each other, and we will continue to do that. Now, in care and love. That looks like many different things. At a big scale, it looks like paid leave and universal school meals and protecting reproductive freedom. On a smaller scale, it looks like parents who are patrolling their schools so kiddos can get safe passage in and out of school. It looks like neighbors taking groceries to people who are too afraid to leave their homes to get the things that they need. It looks like constitutional observers who are observing what is happening and bringing that transparency and light to the lawlessness and terror that is happening in our communities. And Friday, it will look like people not going to school, not going to work, and not shopping. Minnesotans know our power when we stand together, and that's what we will continue to do to protect our neighbors and tell ICE to leave our state. And with that, we will open for questions.
Jamie, with the legislature coming back in session here in less than a month, is there anything at the legislative level that is going to be proposed here? Is there anything that the legislature can do at this point here?
There absolutely is, and many of us up here are working very hard at coming up with legislation that can push back, and if other legislators have ideas that they want to share, we can have folks come up. I personally am working on a bill with Senators Fate and Champion to allow for individual Minnesotans who have had their civil rights or constitutional rights violated by ICE to sue for damages in civil court. We saw a district court judge last week say that it was highly likely that ICE was violating people's First and Fourth Amendment rights. That is not a partisan issue. These are constitutional rights that are basic to all Americans, basic to all Minnesotans. We've even seen some Republican members of the legislature speak out against these violations of constitutional rights. So I'm hopeful that we can find bipartisan support to have some of these protections in place. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to other bills that we're doing.
I can speak on behalf of some legislation that myself and other members of the St. Paul delegation in supporting behavioral health programming to our capital city and county of Ramsey for the consequences of the unconstitutional actions by federal agents, as well as supporting DOPA children who have been separated from their parents and guardians at this time.
Hi there, I'm State Representative Mike Howard. I'm the co-chair of our Housing Committee. As folks have said, there is massive economic destabilization happening because of the actions of ICE that's affecting communities in a very broad way and Minnesotans in a broad way. Specifically, Minnesotans are facing potential challenges with making rent because of how many businesses are shuttered and families unable to get to work to care for loved ones or what have you. And so we are pursuing state-based emergency rental assistance. We believe it's really necessary that the state step up and provide emergency rental assistance to Minnesotans. There are, of course, ways right now that Minnesotans are stepping up in amazing ways to donate to locally led efforts to deliver that assistance to folks. And that's amazing, but the state needs to step up as well. So that's something else we're working on.
Representative Lee Finke. I will be introducing two bills restricting ICE agents, one requiring them to not wear masks in the field. The second requiring cars that are used to detain individuals to be marked and appropriately suited for the transportation of humans. But I do want to say quickly that all of this is moot if we do not have enforcement of the laws. And when we see the civil rights of our individuals being broken in the way that they are, we can pass all the laws we want. If nobody's going to enforce them, they're not going to save and help our people. So we need partnership with the enforcement of these laws.
I'm, hearing lots of bills being quoted here. Representative Long, can you speak to, or maybe anybody else, like how much you think this will be the defining issue of the session when we return in February?
Well, certainly there are a lot of issues that we need to deal with this session. We have not been back in session since the Annunciation shooting. We need to deal with gun violence prevention. We have a lot of priorities that we're going to be pushing, but we can't ignore what is happening in our communities. We certainly hope that ICE is gone by the time that we get back in session. That's our call today. But if they're not, right, this could be happening in real time while we're in session, and we could be confronting this continued invasion of our state and the continued unconstitutional illegal actions that we're seeing affront our citizens. So that is going to be something we're going to have to address. And of course, we're still in a tight house. But I'm hopeful that our colleagues will see that this is not a targeted operation looking to enforce immigration laws. This is a broad attack on our state, an attack on our constitutional rights, attack on legal principles. And so I'm hopeful we can find bipartisan support. Representative Kozlowski.
Hi there, Representative Lise Kozlowski. I represent Duluth, and I'm the co-chair of the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, and just wanted to add that, yes, slate of legislation and policy and funding measures that we can look at, but right now we're also deputizing ourselves as state lawmakers, as elected officials at all level, to do what community is already doing and standing up and stepping in the gaps. We need to also step in. From the Posse Caucus, we have a lot underway, as well as many colleagues here in community who are working on things that we can just do. There are things from, declaring an eviction moratorium to stop the bleed, evict ICE and not us. There, in addition to the rental assistance, there are things that we can do with hospitals to restore those as safe and healing zones instead of places that are criminalizing our community members and having a chilling effect on folks being able to access that care. Support for our immigrant and small businesses that are being shuttered and closed down. That's having reverberating impacts on not just communities of color and immigrant communities, but everybody that is employed, and our communities that are more vibrant, and our tax base that's held up thanks to our people in our communities. Restoring, child care centers, schools as places of learning, and not what President Trump is wanting to make our communities as war zones. I'm really proud of our superintendent in Duluth and working across the state to make sure that we're rallying not just districts that we represent, because we know a lot of our community members, where I'm at, where Representative Senator Bolden's at, is in red places covered by Republicans who are actually adding on to the pain and the cruelty. And so there's a lot we can do, and I just want to say that it is in the power, and we need to actually use its full extent and not give ICE another cent at our congressional level as well.
I'm curious if anybody could, weigh in on a message or maybe advice for someone who might want to support this effort on Friday, but is worried about not having the financial means to do so, maybe worried about losing their job if they, don't go to work, that sort of thing.
Go to work if you need. We're not forcing people.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Just, is there any message or advice for somebody that might want to support or take part in Friday, but is worried about calling out for work, or maybe might not have financial means to not go to work, that sort of thing?
Oh, absolutely. So there are a lot of ways that people are able to step up and take part in what we are doing today. There are actually 4 demands of this particular day that we're calling for. So yes, as you have heard our legislators say resoundingly, ICE needs to leave Minnesota. We are also calling on our congressional leadership to be decisive about the fact that they have to do their job. And currently, it is in their hands to decide if they want to continue to fund this masked militia that is wreaking havoc in our cities and in our state. And so you most certainly are encouraged to call your U.S. Congress, your congressional people, to let them know that message. We are also most certainly calling on the ICE agent who is responsible for the killing of Renee Good to be held accountable, to be prosecuted. And we are also calling on our businesses and our corporations across the state to stand up, to be leaders, to be corporate leaders, in most certainly demanding that ICE leave our state, but also the other demands. And frankly, to be clear, especially for those who are concerned about businesses in particular, there are hundreds of businesses, small and mid-sized businesses, who are closing on Friday because of this. And frankly, there are also hundreds more that are closing because they're forced to close, because of the actions of ICE agents, because of the devastation and the havoc that they've been wreaking here, that it has become untenable. And so the collective pause is one in which we are all most certainly needing to have together to deliver this really strong and important message.
A few of you talked about some legislation you want to propose. I'm just wondering how, if state legislation can actually keep ICE agents accountable, and if the feds are superior.
Well, if there are other bills on accountability, we'll let folks speak to those too, but at least for the proposal that Senator Champion and Fateh and I are bringing forward, the concept is that we are enforcing the Constitution, and the Constitution is the supreme law. There is no issue of federal versus state sovereignty, and so we are giving individuals that right to sue for damages, for having a door broken in without a warrant, for having their car windows smashed, or perhaps even, most tragically, for being shot and killed. And so that will not have ICE agents leaving our communities, but it is at least a form of redress that we can provide at the state level, and there may be others.
But on that point, though, I mean, some of the other ones, like the ban on wearing masks and what kind of vehicles they can drive, I mean, is, say, for the political reality of the legislature where you would need Republican support for them, but wouldn't that be vulnerable to a court challenge? Just thinking about how, likewise, or the counterpoint is that the feds can't command or local law enforcement to work with them. So wouldn't it go the other way, that the legislature can't tell ICE what to wear, what to drive, et cetera?
Representative Lee Finke, I'm carrying both of those bills. I think inherent in your question is the conflict that we are trying to resolve, which is that we have people in the state of Minnesota who follow no law, whether it's local or federal law, state law. There is an agency operating outside of the law. And as state lawmakers, we only have the tools in our toolkit to try to create any level of humanity and dignity for our neighbors, and we are going to use those in every way that we can. So can we force them to take their masks off? No, but can we build a state where we create the kind of environment we want to live in and use that? I believe in the future there will be a different circumstance in which we are looking at the laws that have been violated, and we need to reinforce to our law enforcement, state and local law enforcement, that if you are in the state of Minnesota, this is what we expect. So I do believe we cannot force them to do anything, but we can highlight the fact that there is no law that binds these people. And every story, everybody up here could tell you a dozen more stories, just like the ones that you've heard. All the time, every day, masked agents kidnapping people off the streets. We have the tools that we have, and we are absolutely going to use them.
Representative Long, springboard off of Carolyn's question here. Given the makeup of the legislature here, given the makeup of the House, have you had any conversations with your counterparts across the aisle here? We have spoken with a couple of Republican legislators in the last few days. who are dead set in their support of what is going on here in Minnesota.
Well, they better listen to the public. Because poll after poll has shown that Minnesotans, Americans, see what is happening here in our state. They see that this is a gross violation of civil rights. This is a gross violation of people's humanity in Minnesota. And I do have hope and faith that there are some civil libertarians left in the Republican Party and some folks who do believe in constitutional rights. So, you know, sometimes in the moment when we have the vice president and Pam Bondi flying into town, it can be tough for them to take a brave stance, but I'm hopeful that once we get to session and they are presented opportunities to stand up for the rule of law, to stand up for people's rights, that they will do that. And yes, we're having those conversations.
I think we got time for like one more. We told people we'd be done very shortly. You brought up the vice president's visit, Representative Long. I'm just wondering, are you aware of any PFL leaders that have been invited to meet with the vice president? Do you have any comment on that just in general?
Well, my comment is that it just demonstrates this is all for show, right? They are trying to generate press. They are trying to bring people to the state on a rotating basis because this is not about law enforcement, right? This is about trying to have a performative act of harassing and, as the president said, right, targeting our state for retribution, right? That is why people are coming here, because they are trying to lift up Minnesota as an example. They are trying to do these performative arrests of U.S. citizens to drive up their quotas and to drive up their numbers. They are doing press conferences. They are having cabinet officials with camera in tow, right? Not because they are trying to actually do enforcement, but because this is a show. So no Democrats have been invited.
Notwithstanding this operation, is there a place for ICE in enforcing federal immigration law in this state and others?
I want to take a quick crack at just one other comment there. I'll let another legislator. I have a suggestion for Vice President Vance on who to invite. If he doesn't want to invite DFL lawmakers, I invite him to invite local law enforcement officials here in the state of Minnesota. If what the federal government is doing is about public safety, who more to speak to the safety of our residents than our trusted local law enforcement officers all across the state? And we heard loud and clear from them yesterday about the ways that ICE is making our communities less safe. They're an important voice in this conversation, and to the question before about our local Republicans. They have made a strong vocal showing of saying they support local law enforcement. Well, this is an opportunity now for them to put their money where their mouth is on support for local law enforcement, because our local law enforcement are saying also in unison as well that what ICE is doing is making us less safe.
To answer your question, I think I'll just quote Representative Marion Rarick, Republican in the House, who said, ICE must follow the Constitution. ICE must immediately stop this behavior. ICE must stop racial profiling and violating civil rights as has been experienced and documented by law enforcement. So I reiterate what Representative Mike Howard said. I would recommend he invites local law enforcement.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'm gonna drive a leader.